There we go. Start sharing again. Okay, so just so that everybody is aware, I will be following up this session with an email to you. So you'll get links to the video itself. You'll get this presentation and all the notes from which I'm talking. So you don't have to make any notes yourself unless you wish to. If you'd like to use the chat or the Q&A for questions, then this means that if we run out of time, I can get back to you all later because there's a record of them. So without any further ado, this is what we're going to talk about this evening. A very short introduction, just so that you know what you're getting into. A very quick review of what Parish Online is and does, so that for those of you who've forgotten or are not yet familiar, I hope this will bring you up to speed. And then one of the main asset or parts of the system is the asset manager. So we'll go through that. Then we'll go into the parish layers themselves, which are where you can do all the bits that you want to do on your own private layers. And then we'll go through how you get data in and out, and then go through all the items I said to attract people to this lecture. So we'll go through all the end, and then we should end up with the Q&A session where I hope I'll go through the chat and get through to everybody. If people are having issues during the session, please feel free to leap in and interrupt the flow. That makes it much less boring for everybody else. So I have been 35 years in IT, and I'm also a parish councillor in our local village. And I was fascinated to come across Parish Online, which after 35 years in the business, I recognized as being one of the neatest little applications I'd seen. And having been working with it for the last 3 years, I haven't changed my mind. It's a pretty neat system, I think. In my time in IT, I came across a lot of user groups who did a lot of things for people using particular bits of software. And when I discovered there wasn't one for Parish Online, I started one. So we'll get into the details later, but just so that you're aware, there is a user group. So this is the next bit. Is just I'm going to go whistling through slides just to catch up on people. So do stop me if I'm going too quickly. But on the other hand, we have to bear in mind that hopefully most of you are familiar with what you're about to see. So it's a cloud-based system. So you don't need to download anything except have a browser connected to the internet. All your data is stored by Parish Online in an Amazon website, which is pretty secure. And your data is not available to anybody else, except in a couple of cases, which we'll go through when we get there. Parish Online is what's known as a geographical information system, a GIS, but in theory, you don't need to know anything about GIS to use it. And one of its major points is it's designed for use by all council staff, which is part of getting the workload off those of you who are bearing the brunt at the moment. So the way that it works when it starts up is you get a screen like this, which is broken into two main parts. The right-hand side is the Ordnance Survey's digital map of the UK, and you are free to go all over the UK in your system. You're not restricted to your parish, but when the system starts up, it automatically starts up where it thinks you are. And it thinks where you are because when you signed up for the software, you told it where you were. So if it shows you as being 400 miles away from where you actually are, that's going to be interesting. On the left-hand side, we get columns of layers, or rather a column of all the layers available. And they're divided by color code. So the green base layers are basically how you can adjust the detail of the map on the right-hand side. Then you get the various layers that you can select from, and you can layer each one upon each other to get the sort of picture that you need. And I'll show you how that works in a second. So the vast majority of the layers come from third parties, namely your local county council, your district council, people like the Environment Agency, Heritage England, and a whole ton of people. There's literally hundreds of layers available. So don't worry if you don't know where they all are. In the top of the column on the left, sorry, there's a little magnifying glass, which is a search button. So if you're in there, you can search on anything you're looking for, and it saves you having to wade through hundreds of layers. It'll pop up with what you're looking for. So if you're looking for, say, grade 2 listed houses or addresses or flood information, you just type in the respective word and it'll bring up the layer for you. So moving on, the purpose of this slide was really to show you that I'm in Long Sutton. The system starts with all of the parish boundaries turned on by default, which I find hugely irritating. So the first thing I do whenever I start Parish Online is to turn off the parish boundaries, which are down here in this boundaries administrative patch. And you're left with your own little boundary, which it suspects you always need to know where that is. So the purpose really of the layers here was to show you how you turn on a layer. So this is exactly the same picture, but I've turned on the flooding layer, which you can see with this tick here. And to turn on and off a layer, you just click on it once, anywhere in the layer, and it'll turn itself on or off as a toggle. And what I've done is turned on the flooding layer to show you what happens to this part of Somerset when there's lots of rain. And if you remember from the previous picture, there was no water anywhere visible at all. And all the blue stuff here is what happens when it rains. So you can see, I hope, the whole principle of this is to show you what happens when you overlay a layer of data on top of the digital map. And when you think about it, you can start laying multiple layers on to show all sorts of things. The classic example, I think, for councils is a planning application. And a planning application on the face of it looks perfectly straightforward. But when you start piling in things like sites of special scientific areas, conservation areas, flood zones, grade 2 listed houses, tree preservation orders, all those sorts of things, that can change the picture entirely from the point of view of a council that's trying to decide whether to approve a planning application or not. So really one of the essences of Parish Online is that you layer on the information that you want to change the information that people are receiving. So that shows you how you can use the information. So Parish Online gets its data from all sorts of different places. It's kept up to date on a regular basis. So the Ordnance Survey, for instance, is updating its system all the time, but it tends to update on a 6-monthly cycle. So if your parish was updated yesterday, it should expect to be updated again in 6 months' time. But a lot of that depends upon how your local authorities are providing information to the Ordnance Survey. So you have access to district and county data depending on where you are. And that's why it says there, if provided. And I'll get onto that later because that's a big and enthusiastic issue supported by the user group. So it has a parish asset register for you to register your assets, and we'll spend quite a bit of time on that in a second. And then you can create and manage your own parish plans, which is basically everything else people are interested that aren't covered by the third-party layers or the asset register. And then you have the ability to analyze the data to do with it whatever you do to achieve your ends. So the sorts of things that people typically use Parish Online for, and somebody, Julian, was saying that you bought it for a neighborhood plan, which is very often the first reason that people buy Parish Online, and it is extremely good at working with producing all the map information you need for a neighborhood plan. Asset management, we're going to touch on in more detail in the later. We've discussed planning reviews, contract management, very good for saying to a contractor, these are the bits of grass that I want you to cut, but don't cut those bits of grass over there. And you can show them, give them a map, and they've got it all crystal clear laid out before them. A lot of interest at the moment on climate plans, parish councils declaring climate emergencies, lots of people trying to get going on how they're going to reduce their CO2 contributions. And public communications, how do you get the information from your parish council out to your villagers? This is a great way of doing it. And I'll show you why later. So lots of people in the country using Parish Online. The numbers going up quite quickly nowadays for some reason. It's sort of beginning to catch on. It's like everything else, I think. Once you get sort of the network growing, then it sort of tends to attract more people. But those of you who are with me now, you are not alone. There's lots of others out there. And it has a great facility for passing information in two directions. But basically what you're doing at the parish level can be fed upwards depending on what you're doing. Say if you're on what's called a national layer of allotments or cemeteries, so the current two, the information can pass up to higher levels all the way up to the top tier of government. And the same thing is, it works the opposite direction, that you can get information from a national agency or from your district council or from your county council or the unitary, if that's who you are. And you can bring in related users if your county council approves them as a related user. So a related user is anybody that might be helping your community to run more efficiently or more kindly. So environmental groups are good related users, the people who are tracking the use of phosphates in your area, whatever it happens to be, they can all get access to your copy of Parish Online if it helps you do your job. So I mentioned national maps. I also mentioned that the information that you put in on your parish layer is information that's only available to you. Nobody else can see it. So whatever you're doing in Lytham St Bands or in Long Sutton or whatever it happens to be, nobody in Long Sutton can see it. However, I did mention there's a couple of exceptions, and the two are allotments and cemeteries. And to some degree, this was brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic. The government, when it was faced with the possible threat of having to bury thousands of bodies, they didn't know whether we had the space in our graveyards to do that. So they asked for cemetery information, and the fastest way of providing it was to create a list of questions that you see on the left-hand side in the column. And if you answered all of these questions, then that fed up through the whole layer of government until the top, and they could see how many allotments we had, or in the case of cemeteries, what they were really interested in was how many spare plots have you got. And they were able to get that information very quickly because parish clerks were able to say, well, this is what we've got here in our particular parish. So national maps are, in this case, at the moment, there are only two of them, allotments and cemeteries, but they are able to pass information across the whole country. And that also means that you can go ahead and see what's happening in another village or parish. You can see what the answers are about their cemeteries or allotments if it's vastly important to you. This is just a typical use of Parish Online. There is an address base in the system. If you turn on the addresses, every single building shows up as a red dot. You click on a red dot and it tells you where the building is. But in this particular instance, we're using it to show density. And so if you're where you want, people want to put in a new development or something like that, you can see if it's part of your neighborhood plan, if it's part of the local plan, and if it fits in with the local density of population. So these are just examples of things that can be done with Parish Online. Here we're using several layers. You can see the layers that we've picked on the right-hand side. They're all showing up to give you a coordinated picture of what's going on in this particular part of the country. So I guess, as I said earlier, you can pick your layers to match whatever the question is, if it's a planning application or if it's a new footpath or whatever it happens to be, you can layer the information on accordingly. So assuming that we're all with me still, let's move on to the asset register, which is the only bit of the system which is pre-structured but for your benefit. So all the layers that come in from third-party people, you have no control over that. You can merely see what they've offered you. So, you know, when the Environment Agency sends out flood information, then you can see that, but you don't have any control over it. On the asset register, it's slightly different in that it's a predefined system. So there are different categories in the columns on the left-hand side. and the data that you can collect there, the fields of information, if you will, are all predetermined, but they're all predetermined because they meet a need, and the need is for insurance, basically. So any question that your insurance company is going to ask you will be answered from your asset register. And turning it around the other way, insurance companies are really much happier to defend claims against councils who are using Parish Online, because they know there's a proper record of the information, and you'll be able to demonstrate due diligence in doing maintenance, keeping up schedules of inspection, whatever it happens to be. So each of these categories you see on the left-hand side has got all sorts of data underneath, and you can get that list of data from the help system within Parish Online. So there is a very good support system built into the system. Top right-hand corner, there's a cogwheel, a area menu. You can click on that and it says help and support, and you go in there and basically get all the information you want. But there is, in particular of use here, there's a list of every category in the asset register in that help desk system, and that can be helpful. I advise people who are getting started to print it out, because it's then available for instant reference to see, well, where on earth do I put the footballs that we've just bought? You know, and this will tell you it's sports equipment, but then it'll tell you that underneath it's got, you know, supplies or whatever it happens to be. So, oops, I'm so sorry. What we're going to do with and the asset register is it takes your basic spreadsheet that you may have at the moment and places everything in a location. So this is known as location-based data, and really it helps you see where everything is. So someone was mentioning earlier that they were interested in storing grit bin information, and this is where you can actually see where they are, as well as sort of they're color coded to tell you if they're nearly empty, they're half full, or they're completely full. That all information is visible. So it's a way of getting what I call location-based data, because you click on anything in a place and it'll tell you all about it. So what I've done in this picture, just to show you, is I've turned on the building layer in our particular asset register, and it's popped up with these two little icons showing buildings. Amazing. So the village hall is one, and this strange thing down the bottom, the blue one, is another. And I'm clicking on the blue one, and it turns into this data on the left-hand side, and it tells you it's our pump house. For insurance purposes, we've got to place a replacement value on it. We don't need to inspect it. We keep track of how much it costs the village to get in the first place. But all it is really is just the village pump that used to sort of keep the horses going as they pass through. And someone's put a building around it, and it's now grandly called a pump house. And it's here in a record in the asset register, mainly for insurance purposes. But note down the bottom that there are two attachments. And on the next page, I show you the two attachments that we put in, which are basically photographs of the pump house. And you can see that I think the house itself is vastly more grand than that poor old pump in the corner, which I don't know if it's pumped any water in a long time. But you can add to any feature in anywhere in Parish Online, either your own parish layers or in the asset register, any document that helps you keep track of information. So you can do inspection reports, you can do maintenance reports, you can throw in spreadsheets and photos, just so that people get a much better idea. So the pump house has suddenly come to life because we've put in a couple of photographs of it. So that was the asset register, a run through on the presentation. What we're going to do now is ask you to bear with me. We'll go online into Parish Online and go through the basics just to show you A, how easy it is, B, how fast it is, and C, you'll be able to watch myself making an idiot of myself. So we're going to, first of all, create a new parish layer as if you were starting something. Then you can add a feature to that parish layer, because all the layer is a layer of information that you say you want to store. But then having created that layer, you need to fill it full of information. So that's adding features to it. Then we'll show you what you can do with that information in terms of viewing it and extracting data. And when I say add in photographs, I don't mean the ones that we've just been looking at. I mean overhead photography, as in satellite pictures and so forth of the country. So let me go to the live session. We can go to here, and we can go to Parish Online, and we can log in. And then remember that we're working on a cloud-based system. So we're just logging into the main server, which is stored anywhere where Amazon likes it. We don't like the boundaries, do we? So we turn them off, and it's just a matter of clicking, and you'll see they all disappear except your own one. And what I'm going to do now is create a layer. Several ways of doing that, but the fastest one is to go in here and say, I want to create a new layer. And it says what you want to call it. And this is just going to be a test run. You get the opportunity to put a long description in here, which is a good idea if you're going to create lots of layers, because when you're giving it a short title, you'll find in a year's time when you come back to it, you haven't got the slightest idea what you meant at the time. But if you've written a bit more information here, then that's good. It is optional. The main feature here is you're going to choose your geometry type. So you can add either a point, which is explained to you, a line, which is really good if you're doing footpaths and things like that, or a polygon, which is good for areas or buildings, that sort of thing. So just for today, let's do a polygon. And we would have done this 500-word description if we were forgetful. And then it says, so what do you want to store in the way of information? And it starts off as a blank page, which is not particularly helpful. So you say, I want to add something. And the first thing is a name, which is quite a good idea. So we'll call it, leave it as a name. But then you want to say, maybe I want to put in the date I've created it. So it won't let you have more than one name. You just change that to date. And you do have the opportunity to change to a date nomenclature if you like. I like to stay in text only because I've spent a lot of time in America and I know how confusing it is to have dates in the sort of DDMMYY format, because Americans get that backwards. But you might want to say this is going to be status, only what condition is it in, and you get the opportunity to change a drop-down list here. So you might say that the status is in excellent condition, or it might be in mediocre condition, or it might really be in state. And then you can go on adding layers, columns as often as you like. For those of you who are used to spreadsheet, you know the columns are the bits that go downwards, and the features are going to be the rows across. For those of you who are used to using in databases, these are basically field names. So we're going to say we'll finish there. And our layer will now pop up in the parish layers. And inevitably, it pops up at the bottom, which is not very convenient, but it's here. To turn it on, we would just do a click and nothing will happen because we haven't added any features yet. But because you might be working on this, we're going to show you a quick little trick up here in the top right-hand corner. You can go into the cogwheel, which is for services, go into administration. You're going to wait for the layers to come in, which they will do if you're a patient soul. And what we're going to do is change the order of the layers so that the one we're working on, which is down here somewhere, we can now move to the top. And I just do this as part of this presentation to show you that A, it's quick and easy, and B, it's well worth taking the few seconds it takes to do it, because when you go back to the layers, this will now be the top one. So the lesson there is that you can order the layers in any order that you like in your own parish, and it's usually a good idea to put the ones you use most frequently at the top. So we now have a test run, which has got no information in it at all. If I right click anywhere in here, it says, what do you want to do? I want to add a feature. Okay, you'll recall that this is a polygon, so the cursor has changed to a crosshairs, and all you're going to do is let's add a new sports center right here. I click once to start the line. I go down to the first corner. I go across. I click again. I go up. And then I come across and double click to say I'm done. Okay, we give it a name. And we'll just say it's going to be the Sports Center. We give a date, which can be the 14th of December 21. And we can give a status is at the moment, it's mediocre. Okay, so we save that and it pops up as a square. And then you can go back and say, so what is this square? And you click on it and the left-hand column changes to your data. And here is your data. And this is where you can start throwing in photographs. You can throw in diagrams of what the builders say it's going to look like. You can throw in a picture of what the architect wanted it to look like, and all that sort of stuff. So that's adding a layer and adding a feature to your Parish Online. And I hope that you can see that can cover almost anything you want it to be. And I hope you also saw it was pretty quick. So I think the last thing I said on the agenda for this was what happens if you want to see this with photographs. So up here in the base layers, you do have the option of bringing in aerial data sets. So you can say, show me this particular scene as a photograph. And it'll be a little odd to start with because you've got a mixture. Sorry, anyone asking a question? Oh, someone else has just arrived, I think. Is that right? Okay. So this looks a bit weird, but there's actually a very helpful feature. If you go up to what you're using, which is the premium stack of the Ordnance Survey, if you right click on here, this is a filter and it says, if you want 100% map, you go there. If you want 100% photograph, you go there. And if you want something in between to help you out, then you just choose whatever density you want. So it's a great way of using both the map and the photography together. You can, if you wish, just turn off the map and say, I just want the photograph. Or vice versa. You can turn the map back on and we'll turn the photography off. And we're back to where we started. So basically, that was a quick run through. The next thing I was going to show you is what you can do with this information now that you've got it. So let's just suppose that it's very important that you show where this sports center is going to be to the whole of the village. You can publish this as a public map. And basically a public map is just a way of taking what you've got on the screen and you can layer up things until they're exactly as you want them. And then you publish them as a map which is able to let the public see what you've got, and they can turn layers on and off as they wish and basically see everything that you want. And my favorite bit about public maps is that if you make a change here in Parish Online, then that change is immediately reflected in the public map. So if you're a classic one to do is planning applications. So if a new planning application comes in, you set it in here and it immediately shows on the village website, which is convenient. So just to give you an example of what it looks like, I'm going to show you a public map that was produced by somebody else a few months ago. And what we talk about is Stoddart-Stones footpaths. And the purpose of this is just to show you the power of the system. So notice all I've done is gone to an address in the browser and it's come up with a picture that somebody created in Parish Online. And this is actually the area of Somerset where Hinkley Point Nuclear Power Station is. And the power station creates all sorts of issues, of course, for the local residents. They've got lorries and trucks and all sorts of inconveniences with 5,000 workers coming in and out every day. So Hinkley Point said, we'd like to make a contribution to the parish and we'd like to upgrade this footpath here. You know, it's a pretty rough, cobbly, muddy footpath at the moment. We'd like to sort of smooth it over, tarmac it, and then mums can walk their prams down it, children can ride scooters and bicycles, dogs can go hurtling along, whatever. And everyone thought that was a brilliant idea until the parish clerk said, hang on a minute, guess where we are? Have you thought about near the water, there might be a Ramsar purpose. So you can click on the Ramsar there and it says, it should pop up and say, that's interesting, isn't it? It's failed dismally to do so. Well, how about that? Let us do live shows. Let's try SSSI instead. That isn't working either. Maybe I'm not giving it enough time to catch up. But basically, what happens here is that it turns out that all of this area here, the mudflats and the marshes and so forth, are part of a Ramsar area. And therefore, you can't make changes to a footpath without talking to the Ramsar authorities. Same token, when you turned on the special scientific area, it turns out that there are lots of areas around here which you have to, again, take care of when you're making changes. And by the time the parish clerk had finished, it became clear to both the parish council and the Hinkley Point people that just upgrading a parish path was not going to be a straightforward, simple matter. But the beauty of this system, and it would have been even more beautiful if it had worked properly, is that the information shows how changing the picture changes what it is that you're making a decision on. And the beauty of this is that it's available to the entire public. So if you did it for instance, your planning applications, let's see if that works any better this evening. So we do our planning applications online. Let's see if we can show that. Yeah. So here is our planning applications. Looks really, really complicated until you start saying, well, let's just blow it up a bit. I think it makes a bit more sense. Blow it up a bit further. And now you can see the individual applications and the individual houses to which they refer. And there's this weird index here, which tries to show people what we're talking about. So let's turn the legend off and that disappears. Now you can see each of these individual applications. Bear in mind, this is your general public that's doing this from your village website, and they can say, what the heck is happening to this one down here? You click on it and up comes the information that everyone wants to know about. And it also has a link to the portal for your local district council in our case, and it will pop up with all the legal data on this system, and people can go and look at all the documents associated with this, all from their village website. All they have to do is point and click. So that's publishing via public map, which I'm a great fan of. The other thing you can do is a straightforward print, and inside the square is what's going to get printed out. So you can adjust it so it gives the level of detail that you want. If you say, what I really want to show is that area there, and I want a bit more information, so we'll do with that. And of course, it's like all digital maps, the more you zoom in, the more information you start getting here. And you say, that will do, print it. And it churns away to itself and says, I'm done. Then you can look at it and see how it's popped up a nice little frame around it. It's put on your name and where you are and the date. It's put down here the proper copyright information that the Ordnance Survey requires. And you can now do either save this as a PDF file, or you can send it out as a print file to people on pieces of paper, or send it out, electronically by email. But it's just another way of publishing information from within Parish Online. So I like that. Let's say we're done with printing. We're done with printing. And the last thing I promised to show you was the table view. So again, come down to the layer here of test run, right click, and we see table view. And it pops up and says, here is your record. Now, this isn't a very good choice because I should have chosen something that has lots and lots of records. But basically, everything that you've put in pops up here as an entry, and then you can just export it into a spreadsheet. And you can do the same thing for all the data that comes within the system. So you can turn on the address space layer. Every house now has an address. You can just print out every address in your village as a spreadsheet, which can be really, really helpful if you're doing COVID-19 stuff. Who needs help, who's providing help, and you can just marry the two up and so forth. So that was a quick run through Parish Online. Let's go back to the presentation. See if we've got through everything. I think we've done everything there, yes. So moving on to the next one. Different ways of putting in data. So the first question that nearly everybody asks is, can we import our asset register spreadsheet straight into Parish Online? And the answer is probably not, because Parish Online is all based on location, and most spreadsheets don't have any location information, certainly not in a GIS format. So the basic answer is no, but if you're a big place and you've got the location data, then Parish Online will do the import for you. By Parish Online, I mean the company, not the system. So how do we get data in? And the answer is, do it slowly, but you can cheat to begin with. You can just take your entire spreadsheet and put it as an attachment into the asset register, and bang, it's there. And then as you've got a spare moment or something, you can convert it into a proper data. Because it's a system that has multiple users, and we'll get into that in a second, you can get others to help in too. So you might have someone who's really fascinated by all the lampposts. You can ask them to put the lampposts in if they happen to be parish assets. And it speeds up as you go along. So that's getting data into the system, or you can create layers and add features as we've just demonstrated. We've talked about getting information out. We've done the online demos of each, so now you have that. So now we move on really to the bit that I hoped enticed a few people to come and say, why is this a help to us? How is it going to save us time, make us more productive? And the answer is that it can be a lot faster once you've got the information in there, looking it up, sorting it, exporting it, getting answers out, very quick and very easy. So in itself, just producing reports is a time saver because it's all being done for you by the computer. The other beauty is you can tell people to look it up for themselves via the map system. Really good for if you export the footpaths around nowadays in COVID times. People are saying, no, I want to know a 1 kilometer footpath in good condition that I can take grandma along, but I want a 10-kilometer one that's awful for the kids, so they come back exhausted, muddy, wet, and ready to go to bed. The big time saver, public maps don't need any maintenance at all. Any changes you make within Parish Online are automatically reflected in any of the public maps that you've created. And I think it's faster if you happen to be computer literate to make changes in a computer than it is in your filing cabinet. So what should you be doing with it? Well, it's entirely up to you, but you can do everything. So there are several councils running their entire council meetings within Parish Online. And on the user group website, there is a video which shows you one local village doing exactly that. And they show you how to do it. They show you all the tips you need to make. And I will show you where you can get access to that video if it's a matter of interest to you. But if you're not going to do everything, you might try getting your paperwork out of the filing cabinet and online, where the beauty of that is it's visible to other people, so that when you find you're trying to get information out of the filing cabinet and it's inside a locked village hall, which is shut down because of COVID, and if you can get access, then you discover that the cabinet is locked and there's no key because the parish councillor clerk has gone off sick and she's got the key in her pocket. So putting it online, I think, is a great aid to efficiency. And it also means that you can get at it at any time of the day or night. If you happen to be one of these weird night owls or an early starter, you can just go straight into the system. The asset manager is a time saver. Once the information is in there, it's easy to update, it's easy to get reports out, and it's very easy to store information like inspection records and so forth, so that you have due diligence all done to satisfy any claim made against the parish council. And then it's really helpful where you're trying to improve people's understanding by showing them things visually. So parish councillors, you can suggest that they can get the information themselves by going online, because every parish councillor in the country is automatically granted access to the Ordnance Survey's information as part of what's known as the PSGA, which is the agreement with the government from the Ordnance Survey as to how they give access to their system, and they are obliged to give it to parish councils and councillors. So you could sort of take some of the workload off yourself by getting them to do some work. Visualization, I think it's sort of hopefully been self-evident from today, but we're talking about location-based data, so people can see where we're talking about. You can bring in the necessary layers, you can show them the context of where it is in relationship to other parts of the village. For people who are not familiar with the particular planning application you may be looking at, you can show them exactly where it is. You can zoom in, you can zoom out to improve people's grasp of the situation. You can include photographs, pictures, architect's drawings. You can link to the district council's website for a portal for planning applications and so forth. I love this idea of the history. You can take a snapshot, basically do a print as a PDF this year, and show a particular part of the village. Let's just say you've decided to build an industrial park. So you can take a picture of the field before anything happened. Then you can take a picture a year later where you've got the first 2 buildings in place. Then the parish council decided that they were going to give a tax holiday for the next 3 years. And you can take a picture in 3 years' time and discover that those 2 buildings have gone up to 20. So there's a way of validating a strategy decision taking 3 years before. And then in 20 years' time, when none of the current parish council is any longer in place, there's a history of what the council did 20 years ago. And then we've done the mix and map data with overhead photos where you can filter in or out 100% of either one or the other, or a mixture of the two. So these illusory time savings. There is an upfront learning curve, no getting away from that, and there is a data entry curve, but once it's there, you really start saving time for the reasons that we already covered. So I think the bottom one is helpful. You can shorten council meetings by sending out the map data in advance, and you expect people to have got themselves acquainted with the question coming up. And certainly our own experience here in Somerset is that this makes a considerable difference, particularly if members of the public are coming for any contentious application. It really helps if they've been able to see it all up on the parish website in advance of the meeting. Because it's now online, you can help other people give you help. So give access to others. You are entitled to bring people in to help, and you can give different layers of usage. So you can make people read only, so they can see stuff, but they can't do any damage. You can make them editors, which means that they can make changes to layers that already exist, but they can't create their own layers. Or you can make them data managers, in which case they are able to create their own layers. Or you have one administrator level, which is usually the parish clerk. And that's just, you know, the top layer. You don't need more than one of those, but it helps to have several data managers if you can find people on your council, or they don't have to be members of the council, of course. If you've got your children are really interested in helping you, which all children are, I've discovered, they love to play with computers. So get them involved with technology. We've got local councils near us. There's a Langport Town Council has actually got people in their 20s as council members because they find it fun to play with this stuff. There is a neat geolocation feature. If you haven't seen it yet, look it up on the help system. But basically, you can, for instance, put the park benches and the bus shelter and the lampposts into Parish Online, and then the local school, primary school in particular, can send all the children out on one of their outdoor sessions and say, take a picture of every bus shelter you see, every lamppost you see, every park bench that you see, and you've now got pictures of each asset. And the beauty of the system is that the children can call up Parish Online on their phone. The phone shows them where they are on the map. the park bench will pop up because that's where they're standing, and they can just add the photograph straight to it. So you haven't had to do a thing, but you've now got a photograph of every asset in your parish. And really helpful if you're using parish linksmen. They can do take a lot of the work off you by just inputting the data of what they're doing directly. So I found these are just helpful things to those of you who may not have come across this yet, but you more than double your productivity by having a second screen. You may need to buy a new one, but a new one is available nowadays for roughly an area of £100. If you structure your online work nowadays, your browser can come with all sorts of tabs and bookmarks and things which are very much designed towards speeding you up. Broadband, unfortunately, this is a system that works on the internet. So if you don't have good internet connection, then it's worthwhile investing. I've put a note there about SIM-driven Wi-Fi routers because we actually used to have online telephone cables coming into the village hall, and the service was lousy. We discovered it was actually much simpler to buy a router with a SIM card built into it. The SIM card picks up the strongest cell phone signal around and just uses that as your Wi-Fi. And it's actually better and faster than the landline version. We're actually finding it's cheaper. So we get an unlimited amount of monthly data on our Wi-Fi router in the village hall for less than £30. And the landline was £42. And in fact, it was so effective that we put the same system into the local church, which is sort of 13th century, stone walls as thick as your arm. And provided you put the router somewhere carefully out of sight in a window or something, it works just fine. And for those of you who have not had a recently updated PC, the new ones are so much faster. It makes a lot of difference if you can persuade your council to go for the £300 or £400 it's going to cost for a new machine. Inside Parish Online, there is a knowledge base. I mentioned before, go up to the cogwheel on the right-hand side, top right-hand corner, click on Help and Support, and you can, there's a whole knowledge base of information of anything you want to do, and you can open tickets. And the ticket system within Parish Online is brilliant. Again, there are not many companies I found where when you start using the ticketing system, you actually get a quick response, but the people in Parish Online are very good. I don't think I've opened a ticket yet where I haven't had an answer within an hour, which is very helpful if I'm stuck on something or it isn't working the way I expected it to. There are videos which you can find just by Googling Parish Online videos, and they will tell you how to do all sorts of things. And possibly the most helpful of the lot, and in fact, I might even just show you that briefly at the end, is the case study. So the Parish Online website, parish-online.co.uk, has a tab called Case Studies. And in there's something like 100 case studies that show you step by step how different parishes around the country have achieved something or other. So there will be listings of how they did all their local footpaths. There will be listings of how they do their planning applications. There will be all sorts of things. And there's, as I said, over 100 to choose from. And the beauty of them is the case studies are all step-by-step guides. So all you need to do is march through the case study and you'll end up with exactly what you're looking for. So I do recommend those. They're a tab on the Parish Online website. And then you can get help from the user group. This is their website, and you'll see the first line is click here for demos, banter, or clinic sessions. And the banter is the one I want to draw your attention to. Every Friday afternoon at 3 o'clock, there is a session to which anybody is invited for free. There's what I call the usual suspects, the group that sort of forms the backbone of the banter group, and they're there specifically to help people who have questions. So if you're stuck on any aspect of Parish Online, I would strongly recommend you just go into the Parish Online user group website here and click on a banter session and come on in, drop in, ask your question, get a friendly answer and drop out again, or be so cheerful, so impressed by the whole system that you stay and become a regular member yourself. And it started off as being a help desk session, but it became banter because the sense of humor was so good. Then there's how-to videos, which are slightly different from the ones that Parish Online does because they're a lot shorter. So people are telling us that they need a video that shows them how to do something in 30 seconds rather than a 40-minute full depth there, and we're beginning to build those for users to see. And so that's the user group. Clearly, it's a stroke of genius. And we do training courses. So the next one, in case people are interested, is in January. We have to make a charge for this, I'm afraid, but hopefully it's not a rate that will kill your local council. But basically, this is something that shows you how to do everything you need to do with planning applications. So it's, again, a step-by-step detail thing through. The particular attention I would bring you to is what's called style in Parish Online, which is the way of making your entries have color coding according to some status. So in planning applications, you can have those that have yet to be approved are in purple, those that have been approved are in green, those that have been refused are in red, and so forth. And you have another color for appeals and things like that. So if you want to book any of these courses, then you can go into Parish Online itself, and there's a partners tab, and it leads you to the courses themselves. And I think that's it. You can just go back to the main system and stop sharing and see A, if anyone's still there, and B, if there are any questions. Yes, lots in chat. So let me come through here. Can you drag attachments? So I think that means, can you just drag and drop them? And the answer is not yet. Sorry, you have to, but you can just click on attach, and it should bring up the appropriate directory on your computer, and you just choose the attachment you want to add. Ramsar, I always know people are going to ask that really awkward question, and I haven't got the slightest idea, but if you Google it, it'll tell you. But I think it's more to do with maritime. It's like the maritime equivalent to a site of special scientific interest. Okay, there you go. Someone's given the answer. Bird protection site. Thank you. You're welcome. How do you do that? How do I do what? Okay, so Debbie is answering, say, how do you do that? And it would be useful to know exactly how to do that. And I'm afraid I'm not quite sure which stage you wrote that in. So perhaps, Debbie, you could ask.
I can't remember now. There was a few things. It was like, I think it was on the planning. I've got my planning applications on Parish Online. And at the moment, I'm exporting them to a spreadsheet and then putting that on the website.
Oh.
Now, if there's a way of obviously linking one to the other, and then you were going deeper into it than I think that I am.
Yeah, well, as it happens, of course, you wrote that before we got to the last slide, which says, anything you want to know about planning, come to my next training course. Or come to a banter session. The last banter session of the year is going to be next Friday, or rather this Friday, sorry. So do please just drop in and see what you think about it.
And how do you get onto the banter session?
Go to the Parish Online user group and click on where it says click here for a banter session. We tried to make it very complicated so that no one would know how to do it. But
is the people there all the time? Because I work full time, so I'm not often here like on Fridays and things.
You're not. No, they're only there from 3 to 4 on Fridays at the moment. If you want a special session or a time, just send me an email, and if you have an issue, I'll be glad to go over it with you.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Have we stunned you all into silence?
Graham, I've got a couple of questions, if I may.
Of course.
Julian. So firstly, that was a really good glimpse into the world of Parish Online, and
I'm glad you liked it. Good.
You've opened my eyes as to its capability, but like all these things, now I've got hundreds of questions, but I realise I've got to go and do some research, and I will do that. But one of the things you kept mentioning, or you mentioned a number of times, was the ability for people to access this data either via a website or sending it to somebody. My naivety, I thought we had a single user license.
No.
So I'm curious as to how others can see or get into the information when they don't have a license.
Because of this feature called public map. So Parish Online themselves work very closely with Ordnance Survey. So they won't do anything that isn't permitted by the rules of Ordnance Survey. And what you put into a a public map is basically public information. I mean, yes, there's the basic digital map itself, and you can overlay the photography, which is all very nice. And some people just like playing with that. But what you're really doing is publishing information that the council should be making available to all of its villagers. So that gets around the licensing requirement. So again, that meets the Ordnance Survey's requirement. They're very happy with public maps.
So the license is effectively for someone to use the software to manipulate and to create.
Exactly. Yes. So that answers your question about how is the public able to use it. So they're only seeing what you're letting them see.
Right.
And I mention that very carefully because when you build a public map, and there's a very straightforward section to do that, it asks you in particular, are there any columns of information that should not be visible? And the answer to that is yes. If you're doing, let's say, for instance, allotments, you don't want to put on the public map the column that says this person is very late paying, this guy is really grumpy, don't deal with him. Whatever it is that you've put in there to help you as a parish councillor or clerk, you may not want that information to go public. So you can choose what you put on to the public map. The second part of your question is you thought you had one license. You do have one license, but you're automatically granted permission to enable any of your councillors to access the system in full. And you can bring in any of those environmental groups, for example, that I mentioned, if the parish council has decided in a minuted agenda meeting that this is in the community interest. So the way I like to think of it is the government has already used our taxes to pay the Ordnance Survey to produce this information. So under the PSGA, the Ordnance Survey is required to give you access for free to this information. And then they're putting the responsibility on you to make a responsible decision as to whom you share this information with. So there's that business of related users. But if you can demonstrate that the local birdwatching society is actually doing something very useful towards helping your community, which you've done by saying it's going to be on the agenda for the next meeting. You then have the next meeting and you ask for a vote and the council will say, yes, this is a related use and yes, it's in the community interest. Then you've satisfied all the requirements.
And the mechanic of doing that is just simply by sharing the password and login details, is it?
You can create any number of login details for any number of people, and they can all be the same or they can all be different. So, for instance, I use a login called Parish Councillor at Long Sutton. And all the parish councillors have access to that, and they all have access to the information that we're putting in. But I also give read-only access to a bunch of the environmental groups, and they have the ability to create and edit their own layers, but not mine. So the whole idea being that you're in control of the situation. So for instance, as a data manager, I can say to the Birdwatching Society that, yes, you can create a record of where the eggs are, where the nests are, how many birds there are per nest and so forth. And I have to create that layer for them. But if I give them editor rights, then they can go in and make changes to that particular layer themselves, but they can't change any of the other layers. So you've controlled what they have access to.
So you can't suddenly go on there and find all your litter bins have disappeared because someone else has accidentally clicked the wrong button.
Exactly. So it is controllable, but there is no limit. Because this is a web-based system, there's no limit to how many people can use it and how many people can use it simultaneously. And I've given the parish councillor information out to our 9 parish councillors, and they can all log in at the same time using the same login name and the same password, and they all get individual access to the system. So it is very flexible.
Okay, great.
And
Thank
certainly in COVID times, for instance, I gave, in our case, in Long Sutton, the head of the Women's Institute took charge of all the COVID help. And so we gave them access. And for instance, they could produce a wonderful layer that showed every house in the village. And then all the ones that needed help, you printed in red. All the ones that were often volunteering to give help, you printed in green. And it was a piece of cake to say, well, the nearest red to you, Mrs. Green, is here. So go and help them. And that made it really sensible to know who was looking after such and such. So if Mrs. Jones needed a medical prescription being picked up, then you knew that Mrs. Smith was going to do it for her because she was the nearest person on the list. Yeah. It worked a treat. And we just gave the Women's Institute access to that system to do that on the grounds that it was very much in the community interest. So that's one question. Julian, you said you had hundreds.
No, I'll let someone else have another go. I think most of the other things are detail more than overarching. So
okay, well, there may not be any others. How many other questions have we got?
No, when you give other people access, I've asked them this before, and I think it was that if you're working on a particular project on Parish Online that you don't want anybody having access to that maybe isn't a councillor, can you give, if you then give access to the allotment committee, are they able to then see everything that you're doing, or is there a way of keeping them out of what you don't want them to see, if that makes sense?
You have to be careful. So if the lowest level of access you can give to people is read only, and read only,
they can still see everything, can't they?
They can, but the chances are that unless they found their way around the system, they won't. But it's a bit like emails. You really ought not to be putting stuff on there that you don't want people to see, because this is the whole point of this is public use. You know, it's parish online, so it's parish information. And yes, I know.
Yeah, we'll use it just for the councillors then and won't let anybody else in. Because sometimes if they're working on projects, it might not be quite ready to, I don't know, go out to the public.
Oh, well,
I'm just thinking out loud, really.
So, well, absolutely. And the way we do it is to say that the public has access through the village website, and we control what goes onto the village website.
Yeah.
And that makes life very simple, because you don't need to create hundreds of login names or anything like that. You just give them access to the village website, which they've all got anyway.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that's the simplest way of doing it.
So if I wanted to do the planning thing, how can I give them access through the website? Is it just the link with the page on Parish Online? You know,
when you create a public map, at the end of it, it comes up and it says, this is the link, and you can just send this to people, or you can put that link on the village website. But even better, further down, it says, here is what any website manager needs to plonk in. And it's just a line of code, and he plonks that in and bang, it's there. It really is a question. Someone said, can you drag and drop? And the answer is, you can certainly cut and paste this.
Yeah.
So it's very fast.
Also the website managers. So you can
just send it to them and say, here you go, please would you set this up on the page, that the local village news or upcoming events or whatever it is you have, and he just plonks it in and there it is. It does work. It's very good.
So does that physically create a map when they're on the parish website of the information that's on Parish Online, if you follow me?
The information is always in Parish Online, and it just links to them.
Yeah, but visually, do people looking at the parish website see a map, or do they just get a link that then links?
Oh
them
no,
to-
they see the map. They when they click
That's what I thought you
on,
were saying, yeah.
yes, it just comes up.
So that's interesting. So they can go to an area of the parish website that has various maps because you
Absolutely,
you
yeah,
put
that's one of the
code in there.
beauties of this system.
Right.
I think it's great. The public map feature, I think, is arguably the strongest feature of the whole thing. It's really, I think it's superb. Another one, Debbie. Yeah.
The public map system, is that in the
Can you
cogwheel?
come a little bit closer to the microphone? You've disappeared. There you go.
You know the public maps, the public maps that you're talking about. I mean, if you're going through the cogwheel, there and then on the left-hand side you've got users. Down that side it says public maps. Are you talking about going in there?
Yes.
Right.
And it's very straightforward. It's a step-by-step process. In fact, it's probably the simplest part of Parish Online because it's all done for you. It says, so what do you want? Do you want a photograph, or do you want the most complicated map, or do you want the simplest map? So that's question one. And question two is, what do you want to put on here? And you select the layers that you want. So there's all the layers that you've created. So you choose one of them or none of them. And then there's all the third-party layers, and you choose one of them or none of them. As long as you've got at least one out of the two sections, then it leads you to the next section, and then the next section, and then you're done. That's it. It's only 4 or 5 steps. It's very straightforward. So have confidence, zoom in,
Have a play.
and give me a shout if you run into trouble.
Okay, thank you.
Anytime. All right, so now we've got 2 people left who haven't said a word yet. I'm looking at Linda and Sharon. Any questions, any comments, anything you want answered or done?
Not from me in particular. It's interesting. I've got to find time to get more involved in it. I've had the software for a long time, and I've put lots of our assets in. We've got all our trees in there, all our benches, all our litter bins, lots and lots of stuff. And I attended a Parish Online Zoom thing a month or so back, and I realised what I've got to do, because I did all of this before the asset register section was set up. So I've got to, I think, get in touch with Parish Online people and get them to transfer, which I think they can do, all of my data into the asset register section, because otherwise it will take me years to do it.
No, I'm sure they'll be able to help you out there.
And then the next stage that I'm trying to get a bit more knowledge on is we're in the throes of a neighbourhood plan. The policies are all drafted, and we've now got to put maps in amongst all of the text that we've got. So we've got to look at creating the maps, and that's where Parish Online is really going to come into its own for us, I think.
Yes. So the essence of that is that your neighbourhood plan tends to be a really solid document that is sort of looks as if it's being produced by a desktop publishing system.
Yeah.
And you have to be sure that Parish Online is not a desktop publishing system. It's very good at producing maps, but by far the best way of using them is to extract them and put them into a document that is where you can manipulate them and do whatever you will with them.
Okay.
So good luck with that.
Thank you very much.
There are lots of neighbourhood plans. By the way, look up on the Parish Online website under MARTOC, M-A-R-T-O-C-K.
Yeah.
They've just done a neighbourhood plan, and it tells you how they did it.
Oh, lovely.
So it tells you all the tips and trips and things to look out for. So MARTOC in Somerset, M-A-R-T-O-C-K.
Right, thank you very much. I'll look that up.
Good. So Sharon, you're the last one. And you're muted. There you go.
Yes, thank you. Well, as I said at the beginning, we haven't actually got Parish Online, but as we are probably going ahead with the neighbourhood plan, I wanted to be in at the beginning because on some of your sessions. So here I am. I'm really enthusiastic about it, and as the clerk, I'm really raring to go, because basically I've got my hands on it. But it looks like, if that's the best way to
So-
have the clerk, sort of keeping tabs on how it runs, basically. That's
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
I have a couple of tips for you. So first of all, there is a 30-day free trial. So you can download, or you don't have to download anything, but you can create an account and just play with it. And any data that you create during that free trial period remains in the system. You don't lose it.
Brilliant.
So
Yeah.
it's there. If you then take 3 months to decide what to do, it'll still be there in 3 months' time. The second thing is that every parish council has to have insurance. If you place your insurance through a broker called BHIB, who are actually, they represent Aviva, they will pay for your Parish Online subscription for you. So basically what they find is that they've saved themselves so much time and trouble by representing councils that have got Parish Online that it's worth their while to pay the subscription.
Okay.
So incidentally, we did that, and not only did they pay our subscription for us, which, you know, for a little village our size is only £70 a year. It's not mind-bending, but they actually turned out to be the most competitive broker anyway. So it's a win-win. You get the lowest fees, and then you get Parish Online thrown in on top.
Yeah.
And the way they work, they say, is if you are due to replace your insurance, and most people run insurance over a 3-year contract, if it's going to be replaced in the next year, then they will go ahead and pay your subscription for you straight away, on the promise that you will actually place the insurance through them when the time comes. So you don't have to wait until your subscription is due. You can do it up to a year in advance. So I think they're very helpful people.
Yeah. Sure. Okay, I'll have to look into that. I don't think we're insured through them, so there we go.
Well, you never know, but when you go into the pricing section of the Parish Online website, it all pops up for you about how you can get hold of this for free. So again, it's all there.
Yeah, fabulous.
And we've done it, and it does work.
Yeah. I must say, when I did put the possibility of having this to my parish council, the people that do anything were very enthusiastic. So I think it will go ahead at some point, but actually when is another matter. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
well, I mean,
yeah, it's partly that we're a very small parish as well. We have less than 200 electors. In fact, I should think it's only about 120 plus children. Everything is, on a voluntary basis. You actually only have so much time, don't you?
correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
and,
but that's why we started the banter sessions, because people can just drop in and say, I've had this question that's been bugging me for the last week. Can you just, and they tend to solve it right there and then for you.
Yeah,
So,
fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
You're very welcome. Is there anything else I can help people with?
No, no, but I would just like to add what you've just said. Even though we've had Parish Online for many years, we changed 18 months ago from Zurich Insurance to BHIB, and we went for a 3-year deal, and they picked up our Parish Online subscription, even though we're long-term users of it. And BHIB were vastly cheaper than Zurich for Parish Council insurance.
Yeah, we actually
very good deal.
We halved our costs.
Yeah, it's an excellent deal.
Yeah,
it is an excellent deal.
Yeah, thank you. I've got a star in my notes.
And also, just quickly, Sharon, did you say you're from Longstow? Is that in Cambridgeshire?
Yes, it is. Yeah,
I'm only the other side of the 428 from you. I'm in Swavesey.
Oh wow. Oh, so maybe we should meet when I've got rid of my COVID, because I'm now in isolation.
Oh dear. Oh right. Well, whenever in the new year sometime, if you did want to pop over to the office and you can see what I'm doing with it, you're welcome to.
That's fabulous. Thank you. Yeah, I really would love to do that. Yeah, thank you. And Swavesey. And just let me.
Yeah, Swavesey.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah.
Thank you. That's me done.
You've been a wonderful audience. Thank you all very much. Do come back if you need any help. And as I say, the online user group is there to help, particularly with the banter sessions. So I do. Since I started them, I recommend them as being just superb. Thank you all very much. If there aren't any more questions, I'll say goodbye. Wish you all a very Merry Christmas, a COVID-free Christmas. I hope.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I will be free of it, but
How
I work
much?
in a school. What do you want?
Oh my gosh! Right.
Yeah.
Well, good luck.
Yeah,
And
thank you very much.
I hope I see you all again next year.
Really useful. Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Thank you very much. Have a
Thank you
good
very
You're
much.
very welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.